Warm-up exercises.
Warm-up exercises are a critical component, especially before initiating on a certain task.
About to hit the gym? You need to do some stretching before doing that core exercise. About to get hit in the face with a soccer ball? Well, buddy, you have to stretch.
The point is, it basically helps stretch your muscles so that it won't cramp afterwards once you're doing something. Another thing to point out is that warm-up exercises are basically an essential as it helps us to achieve peak performance. Speaking of which, art is no different when it comes to warm-ups. Muscle control is an essential, yes, but in art, it helps stimulate the mind. With this, it means that it can help you work visually in an effective manner. And with that being said, let's jump right into it. Before we begin on the exercises, I'd just like to point out that there is technically no quote-unquote correct way to holding a pencil. Although personally, I'd prefer it if you hold the pencil either like this, which is standard, although could cause some minor drawbacks such as difficulty in how much pressure you should apply, or a tendency on relying too much on the wrist when motioning. But if you hold it like this, it discourages relying on the wrist movements as you're relying more on your shoulders, and this allows pressure control over the pencil. The only downside being it'll take you some time to adjust to this hold. But personally, out of these two, I'd still prefer this. Earlier, I have mentioned something about shoulders. One key element when sketching is that your strokes must at least start from the shoulders. By doing this, it gives you far more control on your strokes than adjusting with your wrists. Your goal here is to have smooth, deliberate lines, so always keep in mind to keep your elbows and arms loose. Now let's get moving to the good stuff. Take note that you can do these exercises in any order, so you don't really have to worry much about what goes first. First up, lines. The point of doing lines is to at least get comfortable, especially when handling your pencil. Another thing to point out is that it also helps you to use your shoulders more when doing strokes. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I don't know how to do lines, I don't know how to do shapes. I missed preschool, I didn't go to school, what do I do? Well, that's why you're in this tutorial video, aren't you? It's because you are a sense retard. Just pick a starting point and just drag your pencil across the paper in a gentle motion, originating from your shoulders. I'm gonna give you a pro gamer tip. When doing a line, try not to focus on the line itself, but rather on how you make the line. Now, after doing that, practice doing some multiple strokes. Try doing some parallel lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines. You can do some cross-hatching. You can do that one swirl thing that is technically a line to give it a variety. The point of this exercise is to focus on doing strokes by controlling it using your shoulders. Next up, circles. Doing circles are much more complex than lines, as this requires even more control with your shoulders, although the process is still the same. Pick a starting point and focus on the motion you're making, except that here, you're trying to create a curve. It's fine if you do this as quickly as you like. However, I advise if you take your time to make it more deliberate. Now, after that, try making as many circular objects as much as you like. It's okay if the results aren't even perfect. Jump from small circles to big circles. Heck, you can even add in swirls for good measure. The point is, you're practicing your size control among the circles that you draw. It may be challenging as well, but you'll get there. Next, ovals. If you don't know how to make ovals nor know anything about them, please, go back to preschool. I am really concerned about you right now. Making ovals are just as similar to making circles, except squishing the circle down to make two of its sides closer to the center. The point of this exercise is basically the application of depth. A good trick into making ovals is to draw rotated circles. Make them feel as if they're facing different sides, or maybe trying to form some sort of squash and stretch. And finally, three-dimensional shapes. If you're not aware or educated enough to understand the full concept of three-dimensional spaces, it is simply a geometric setting in which three values are required in order to determine the position of an element. Elements including space, line, plane, mass or volume, value, texture, color, and, yes, shape. I would like to go on and discuss more about these elements with much more detail, but I'd rather not. It's boring. Shapes, however,
These include spheres, cubes, pyramids, cones, and cylinders.
A key to making 3D sketches is to try visualize what you're making.
Try imagining you're making a can of soup, or a simple cardboard box, or maybe a tomb that was made for Egyptian rulers that made slaves of their people.
Either way, it's fine with whatever you come up with. Just go wild! The point of making 3-dimensional shapes is to combine the circles, lines, and ovals that were previously mentioned. Sketching 3-dimensional shapes isn't that hard. Just remember to apply depth into these 3D shapes. Make it as logical as possible in terms of perspective. I personally advise using horizontal lines on the sides, especially with cylinders and cubes, to give the illusion of depth, as these lines will later on be foreshortened, or in simpler terms, would appear smaller as it recedes in space. And there you have it! Congratulations! You're now ready to take on over the world with your pencil and paper. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be cramming the rest of the video. I am in great danger.